Yeah.
All working. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Hi, my name's Michael. I go by Yeast Plume, just on the internet, but not here, please, because it's, like I say, it's weird. Okay. So Daniel's already talked a little bit about this, but given the stage where we are in the project, where we launched a couple of months ago, as Igno just said in his lovely voice that he has, the kind of launch excitement has died down. So it's really now about, what are we going to do in the future? So I'm going to give you a brief overview about our roadmap, our goals, where we are, the future tech that we're planning or thinking about putting into Grin, and then I'm going to ask you to give us your money after all of this is done, again. So, okay, we'll go just dive in here. So this is our roadmap for the next little while. This has actually been through a few iterations now, so to get to this point. I mean, the point I'm trying to take here is we have no roadmap. This is an open source project. We don't have a board full of people looking for a return and saying you must put a roadmap out there. We try and do it as very much as a take it as it comes approach. A lot of this is new and emerging technology, so we can't promise we're going to have such and such in 3 months or what have you, because that's kind of ridiculous with what we're doing. So what I can tell you is we do have a set of kind of overall project goals at a very, very high level. First, obviously, provide open, scalable privacy for all. I think everybody knows anything about Grin knows that. We want to further research on Mimblewimble technologies, develop them, test them out in the field, and we also want to make sure that it's accessible and usable for all needs. And I think the third point here is actually one of the most important ones right now. We have we've done our first release, the technology's out there. It's a little bit hard to use at the moment. Everybody knows that. Everyone who's tried to use it knows it's a bit more cumbersome just by the nature of Mimblewimble than other blockchains. So there's all sorts of ways that we're trying to address this and make this easier for the community to build on. And more immediately, we're not going to come out and compete with Visa. I think we're the new payment system for the 21st century. That's not the case. But it would be nice to get to a point where we can get to a point where we're accepted, where other cryptocurrencies now might be accepted. So I'd be quite happy if in a few years we see, we accept Bitcoin, Monero, and Grin. And I think that's a good place to be aiming for right now. So where we are, again, Daniel kind of covered some of this in his slide and ruined my slide by doing that. So thanks very much, Daniel. I appreciate that. But I'll go over this quickly. We launched a blockchain, you might have heard. It has all of these technologies in there from the get-go. We have Mimblewimble, fast sync, which lets you sync your node, a new node, in what should be more or less constant time. Schnorr signatures, certifiable transactions. Do we have that? Can you slip that in there? Okay. I could be lying about that. Cuckoo cycle, bulletproofs, Merkle, all of these things I won't go into detail. There's plenty of information about these on the site. But my point here is there's a lot of kind of new technology that's just kind of emerging in the crypto field, and we've kind of swept it all into Grin, and it's there and it's live and it's working, which I think is a great place to be in. From a community perspective, again, Daniel talked about this. We have various block explorers, wallets, mining pools, exchange support, and all of this kind of burgeoning, emerging community. Building on top of what we have there, which I think is really great to see. I think this is one of the project's biggest strengths, is that we have this community who is so active and so kind of willing to build stuff on top of Grin. Security audits, we talked a little. I'm not going to go over this again because, again, Daniel just wanted to ruin my presentation by talking about all this before. Okay, our current focus. And again, Igno said this very quickly. So for the kind of short to mid-term, what we're going to be looking at is, number one, performance stability, security improvements. That's kind of a given with a new project. We want to make those incremental improvements as we go. Actual new functionality, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, like all of the stuff that we've said we think we can do, like vaults, relative time locks, lightning, all this kind of stuff. And I'll talk about how we approach these new technologies in a bit. And number three, which I think is actually the key point, especially at this phase with the new blockchain, with all the launch excitement down, to support the ecosystem. So we're not necessarily going to be the ones building, but we are going to make sure we're providing the tools that can encourage the community to build all of this infrastructure on top of what we have. Okay, ongoing improvements, bugs, enhancements, results of audits. Again, that's kind of what you'd expect at this point. Calm and measured introduction of new features, and then the community. The second point here improvements and fixes as needed. Yeah, I think that's a given. Enhancements, community features as identified, new technologies as and when they're ready. So again, a lot of the technologies of the new kind of things that we want to put on top of Grin, it's a little difficult to see right now how we're going to put those in right as we're standing now. All of the technologies in Grin are new. Some of the stuff, because we don't have scripts, there's a lot of talk about scriptless scripts and ways of doing stuff that you traditionally do with scripts in Mimblewimble. It's all great in theory, but some of it either will require some new mathematical thinking, new developments to come out, or we bolt stuff on that doesn't really fit in with the kind of how nicely everything is already sitting together in Mimblewimble. So we're not going to rush this process. We're going to add new technologies as and when they're ready, as and when they get to a point where they think they're done. And there's an example of this coming up as well, the Fly client, for instance, which is a way of doing basically very, very fast mobile clients, SPV clients, without having to sync the whole chain, without even to get the whole header history to give you an accurate kind of quickly synced mobile client. And that's an example of something that we thought we could put in. We certainly prepared for it, and now the paper's actually been released, and it's looking more and more likely that we'll put it in. And that's kind of the process that we'll be following to introduce new technology into Grin. As far as our roadmap and how far we look ahead, we tend to look maybe one minor and one major release ahead, and I think that's about as far as we can go. So right now we have our 1.10x series, which is the critical fixes and stuff that's not going to break any moment in the update. We have our 1.10, which is our next major point release, and that will be the wallet code is split, Windows support, Dandelion. There's a new version of the wallet API coming out that should be ready to support future needs and changes to the wallet. And then, okay, maybe we can think a bit further ahead to the next consensus breaking, our next scheduled hard fork, which is we have a 6 months hard fork schedule that we baked in for the first 2 years, so that'll be version 2. We're not following the Bitcoin protocol of like having 3 version numbers but never using one, so version 2 is going to be the next hard fork, et cetera, et cetera. So the future core tech, the stuff I've been talking about, stuff that, like we say, we think we know how to do, not quite sure how to put it in there without kind of bolting it on or like duct taping it on. Atomic swaps have actually been done by Jasper, who's in the room somewhere, I can't see him. He's actually done some successful tests against Ethereum and Bitcoin test chains. We have relative locks, which is needed for a whole bunch of other technologies, and we're kind of, I think we picked that a while ago to look at. For 1.10, I don't even think we've made any progress on that. Fly client, I just talked about, we're excited about that. It should be doable without a lot of impact on the the core kind of technology itself. Vaults and covenants to improve attack security, RSA accumulators, you might have heard some about that. Some of this stuff, if it actually does come to pass, we're going to end up with less of a chain and more kind of a moving head and not even needing to keep the chain history if this comes to pass. And again, it's stuff we kind of get excited about to talk about amongst ourselves, but it's still quite a way off. The scriptless scripts and then Lightning, again, further away. There's no kind of time scale or promises for this. So when it comes to the ecosystem itself, which, as I was saying, I think is one of the more important things to focus on now, we have a very non-prescriptive approach to how to do things. So, for instance, like the wallet itself, there's a transaction, as you know, that has to happen between 2 people. It needs to be interactive. We need communication there. There's a whole, there's an infinite number of ways you can handle this. So rather than saying like, right, we've built this core service and everybody has to use this and what have you, instead we're focusing on making the APIs easy to use so people can build their own solutions on top of this. So Wallet 713 that Daniel's involved in, that's one example of how to do the exchange. You could have other, ways of doing the transaction exchange that might trade off some privacy that people are willing to put up with for convenience, or you might want to enable a service whereby, nobody wants to be seen and everyone has to do the transactions wearing a dark cloak in a back alley and exchanging. Well, we're really leaving it up to the people to decide, or to the community to decide what solutions work in their particular instance. Our job really, we think, is to just provide the tools to make this happen. And like any good developer, the way they make this happen is with APIs, good APIs. So we're building API for the transaction building itself, for the wallet, the keychain itself, node usability, mobile web, like all of this. That's probably going to come a little bit later. That's really our focus right now, to put these APIs together, refine them, have the community use them, and reiterate over them. And again, supporting this with documentation, wikis, and support from developers as and when it's needed. So that's really our job. Like we know we're not going to build the nicest GUIs. We're not going to build, the best methods of exchange or what have you. We're just going to make sure that the core tool set is there so that people can use it and the community can build on top of it. So in terms of the future of the council, we have our council together. It seems to work for now. The way kind of Grin is run, we can't sit down and say, right, this is our structure and we're going to do this and this in the future. We tend to develop things as the needs arise. So the current council, it seems to work for the most part for now. It's a bit small. We'd always prefer a bit more diversity, but there's a question of how do we expand it? Are we expanding it for the sake of making it more diverse? So it's all these kind of questions that we need to. Like for now, it kind of seems to work. So we're probably not going to change that too much in the future. And then the future of funding is, okay, as you probably know about Grin, we had no ICO, no pre-mine, we're all completely community funded, which is great and nice, but it also means we're quite poor and it's very difficult to see what's going to happen resource-wise. Like myself, I've run my own funding campaigns. I'm funded for another, say, 6 months. Maybe beyond that, I don't know. The hype could have died down so much that I won't be able to do that again, or we won't have enough money in the fund to be able to continue the way we have some developers now working from the kind of main fund. We have a few kind of community pledges, so to speak, as in certain organizations in the community will pledge, we'll give a certain amount of our proceeds into the Grin fund, and some of them are actually doing it, and it is coming to pass. But obviously, we need a lot more of that to be able to sustain development completely. And this is where, again, we have a general fund which covers all this, and it's guaranteed it will either go to developers or development work or to anything that the project actually needs. And I'm sure you'll be hit in the face with this a few more times this evening. So yeah, and that's it for me right now. So thanks very much. And it's time for everyone to get Trump.